want to talk about Ruben Loftus-Cheek and also Ross Barkley, because before recording this, surprise of the day, woke
Yeah,
up. Ross Barkley was on the bench for Chelsea last night against Spurs. This morning, waking up, seeing Ross Barkley confirmed season loan to Aston Villa. I mean, it's hard to say this came out of nowhere because we were hearing rumours at the back end of last week that both Ruben and Ross Barkley were being touted for a potential loan move. But I made a video saying I leaned in a direction that I thought actually Ross was going to stay instead of Ruben going out on loan. Let's start with Ross Barkley because he's a very interesting player, just in terms of his whole career.
hmm
And I think someone, I can't remember what word it was, but it was like talking like the concept of Ross Barkley, and sort of Villa fans are going to have to become used to that. And I think
yeah,
using the word concept to describe Ross Barkley, I think is a brilliant term to use him by, because I think last season at times he was brilliant for Lampard. He was one of these surprise players of last season where Lampard's meritocracy really benefited Ross to get into the first team. And I think overall he seemed to suit Lampard's system very well. But because he's not the most favoured player in terms of quality or natural quality, or you trust him week in, week out, he's been a fringe player. What do you make of Ross? Do you think this is a mistake letting him go on loan?
yeah. I'm a big fan of Ross Barkley. Actually, I take a bit of criticism on social media for sticking by him. Actually, I think he's a really good football player. He is similar to teams like Villa and like Southampton, where they maybe don't get all the plaudits they deserve because they're not the biggest, most attractive teams that sometimes don't play the sexy football that you like to see. Um, but yeah, I think Ross is a great player. 2-footed, very physical, very comfortable on the ball. His ability to get amongst the goals is really appreciated as well. And I really like Villa, and I think they're going to stay up. I think they'll be fine. I think it's huge that they've kept hold of Grealish. I think Ross Barkley's going to slot in perfectly, and Ollie Watkins up front. I expect him to score quite a few goals this season because he's a really good striker. I don't really understand it from a Chelsea perspective. It makes no sense to me. I would have much rather Ruben gone out on loan because he needs the minutes and he needs to get his fitness up. Whereas Barkley offers everything to the club. He's very Ross Barkley is very consistent in his own way, and I really did like him as a squad player. However, I can understand from his point of view that he wants to play regularly, and Villa are a big club. That's just because they're not tabletop in it; they are a massive club, and he's going to start week in week out, and I can understand that, and I'm happy for him that he's going to get that chance because I think he's going to be a really good player this season. But it's just a shame from a Chelsea perspective because now we're seemingly a bit thin in that area, and he's a perfect player to bring on. But I can understand from a personal perspective why he would want regular minutes.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing because I think in some ways you could argue Ross could be a very useful player, like you saw against Brighton on the opening day. I mean, I think Ross Barkley basically changed that game, or at least when
hmm
Ross Barkley came on, Chelsea suddenly actually were able to pass the ball for more than a couple of seconds before losing it, and we looked like suddenly a bit of a cohesive team, and got us further up the pitch. And that's the surprising thing about Ross. I think he just, in some ways, a bit like Mason Mount, seems to just suit what Lampard wants to do on a pitch at times. I think even if at times he will be a little bit inconsistent, he's not going to solve our defensive issues in that area at all. But as you said, I think has got the capability to come on in certain situations. If Frank wants to rotate, maybe Kai or Mount during the season, he could have been useful. But there is that chance he could get into Gareth Southgate's Euro squad next year. And I'm sure he's
Yeah,
thinking, because he's been a regular member of the England squad recently. So absolutely understand, and I hope he has a really good year. And I'm excited to see what he does at Villa because I'm a massive
yeah,
fan of Jack Grealish. He's one of my
yeah.
favourite
Me
players to
too.
watch in the
Me
league,
too.
and I think definitely there. I could see them having quite a good year, to be honest, because I think actually their transfer business has been really good. I think Emi Martinez as well in goal. I think that's a really
Yeah,
good piece of
sensible,
business,
isn't it? It's very sensible.
and I think they'll do well. But then moving on to Ruben, I mean, I've said this before. I think Ruben's one of my favourite players in the squad. But it still seems he might go out on loan, which once again is strange to me because I did think, and then there's rumours linking Jorginho away. I mean, we could go from an area of midfield being the most stacked area of our pitch to one of the most limited areas of pitch in like a span of a week. What do you think about Ruben? Because you've just expressed that you think he needs this loan. Where do you think, what club do you think in the Premier League would be good for him? And why do you think that loan would be beneficial to him?
Wow, what club would be good for him? That's really tough. I think Brighton would be quite good, probably. I think Southampton would be quite good. I say that because I think Hasenhüttl and Potter are really good managers. I think they want to play front foot football. I think Southampton actually would be a really good move for him. I could also see Wolves to some extent maybe giving him a chance because I think he's better, or he's kind of what they expected Gibbs White to be, which maybe hasn't quite worked out. But I don't know where he'll go, but I think he needs minutes and he needs to play regularly. He needs to get his fitness up. Um, and he's an enigma as well, isn't he, Loftus-Cheek? Because sometimes you watch him play and he literally looks like one of the best players you've ever seen. He is so big and strong and elegant and graceful, and he knows where the back of the net is. And you look at him and you think, if you played like this week in, week out, you would be the best player at the club. But that just doesn't happen, and that's a real shame. And he signed a big contract at Chelsea. He's not a young player anymore. He's got international experience, and realistically, if he can get his fitness up and can play a full season, there's absolutely no reason why he can't come back and be a big part of our team, because he has so much natural ability. But in a similar way to Ross Barkley, Loftus-Cheek is maybe less so, but looking at that England squad, I'm thinking just maybe I can get in. But I think that's a push when you have Maddison, Grealish, Barkley, Mount, everyone else, Dele, Henderson. But yeah, Loftus-Cheek needs to play regularly, and it's not going to happen at Chelsea. It's just not, especially with Kai Havertz hopefully going to play as a number 10, or Ziyech going to play in that position as well, and that just means that Loftus-Cheek's getting pegged down in the pecking order. So yeah, I'd like him to go to a Premier League team where he's going to play regularly and he'll play front foot football. Leeds would also be a really interesting team for him to be at. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see and hope that he has a good season, because that for Chelsea fans is something that we really like to see.
I hope if he does go on loan, even though it'd be disappointing, because I think you want him at the club, and there's that dream that he could break into the first team and have an amazing season and come back really strong like during the season. I mean, my predictions are going to look really stupid, because I think my surprise player of the season, I picked Ruben Loftus-Cheek, which is going to look stupid now if he moves on loan. He started the opening game of the season, so in a different world it could have been a very different story. But yeah, I agree with you. I hope it would be more a case of, say, look at Kurt Zouma. I mean, Kurt Zouma is a great example of a player that went on loan. I think a lot of us felt after his long-term injury, has he got a future at Chelsea? But now he's come back, and as we were talking about earlier with Kurt, he's now one of Chelsea's best centre-backs. I think that hopefully Ruben will use maybe Kurt Zouma's career recently as inspiration. That even if you do go out on loan, there is an opportunity at 25, 26 to return to the club and break into the first team. I mean, it is a big question. Do you think Ruben, even with the loan, and if he does well, do you think he's got a long-term future at Chelsea? Because there is this concern, right, with his injuries and being shifted out on loan, when really at this point in his career, you think he's got to now be in the first team for Chelsea?
It's tough. I think that question will be answered at the end of the season. But as it stands, as much as I don't want to admit it, I can't really see it. I think he's too injury prone, and I think that's the issue. And I'm not sure, because I obviously don't know him personally, but I would like to see what his mentality is like, because your Zouma example is brilliant, but his mentality is pretty elite, actually. I think he saw that his loans at Everton and Stoke would get him back in the Chelsea team, and that's where he wanted to be. And I've no doubt in my mind that Ruben wants to be in the Chelsea side. However, we need to move forward as a side and a team. We need to progress. We need to cut dead weight or players that aren't able to give us 100% whenever they play. And Loftus-Cheek might be one of those, and that would be awful for Chelsea fans, because we all want to see him playing week in, week out like he did with Sarri and playing so well. But this is probably the most important season of his career, I'd say.
I guess if he does go out on loan, as we were talking about, I think hopefully he gets the right move, a style of football that suits him. I think a club preferably that plays a midfield three consistently. That doesn't mean that he can't fit into any system, but I think, as we saw with Sarri, I think if you put him on the left of a midfield three, I think he can really thrive. And then you're sort of looking, Hasenhüttl, I think still plays a 4-2-2-2. I think, he likes to sort of, but then maybe that could suit Ruben, in that midfield. I think it'd be interesting to see him maybe under Graham Potter. I think that's another good shout as well. But we'll have to wait and see. The transfer window is nearly shut, so we will get an answer to this, whether Ruben goes out or stays with the club for the season.